Hello everyone. With 2024 quickly coming to an end and 2025 just across the other side of the horizon, I've been taking a look at the book series that I would like to start in the not too distant future. I've nailed it down to a top 10 that I'd like to go over here today. These are series that I haven't started, haven't read any books of, and that I'm looking forward to getting to either at the end of this year or in 2025, hopefully at least starting. I doubt I'll finish many of these series, but I'd at least like to read book one or try the first few books in the series here. And so I'm sharing that list with you here today. Number one has got to be Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. If you've been on BookTube at all, you've heard of this series. It is legendary for being very intense, very long, is often described as being very dense and difficult to understand. In some ways, this is the Leviathan of fantasy. This is the great white whale that people will go after. I've been intimidated by this series for quite a while because of its length, but it does often get compared to the writings of Gene Wolfe, who's one of my favorite authors. Not in terms of similar tone or similar style, but just in terms of the complexity and density of it. And I've had people say that if you can read Gene Wolfe, Steven Erikson will be no problem. So that's a relief to me. Also, A.P. Canavan, here on YouTube, known as the Critical Dragon, gave an excellent piece of advice when it comes to reading this series if you're intimidated by the length, which I definitely am. And that is, he said that you don't need to read it all at once. You can read it, you can break up your reading of it. You can take breaks or read it in chunks. And so for me, I'll probably do that. I doubt I'll binge through the series, but I definitely look forward to seeing what the hype is all about. And yeah, I really want to love this series, so that's why it's number one on the list. The number two series is going to be Book of the Long Sun by Gene Wolfe. This is the sequel series to the Book of the New Sun, which is one of my favorite series of all time. I know that this is only loosely connected to Book of the New Sun. My understanding is that Hyperion is not the main character here, and that it's told more or less in third person, rather than the way Book of the New Sun is being told. But Gene Wolfe is one of my favorite authors, and so I can't wait to keep reading the books in his broader sci-fi series called The Solar Cycle. So I really do look forward to getting to this. I've got the audiobooks all queued up and ready to go, so even though I put Malazan before this, I will likely get to this and start reading this before I do Malazan. Number three on this list is going to be a Canticle for Libowitz, and most people know of this as a sci-fi post-apocalyptic standalone, but there actually is a sequel of sorts that Walter Miller wrote, or at least wrote most of before he died. I believe it's called Saint Libowitz and the Wild Horsewomen. So I have it, but I haven't read it, but I really do need to get to a Canticle for Libowitz. It's been regarded as one of C.S. Lewis's favorite pieces of science fiction, and yeah, it's been sitting on my shelf for years. It was the inspiration for the Fallout games, so I'm excited to get to it for that reason as well, and yeah, some good classic weird sci-fi to get under my belt. So Canticle for Libowitz is number three. Now number four on the list is a bit of an odd choice, and that is because this is a series that is long past its heyday, and that is the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. So this last year I read the Night Angel trilogy, which I greatly enjoyed. Book 3, not so much, but I enjoyed a lot of other things about the series, and Brent Weeks is quite the controversial author. A lot of people don't like Night Angel, and a lot of people famously hate the ending of this series. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it, so I'm excited to read it and see where I land, but I at least like a lot of the ideas that Brent Weeks plays with. He's got tics about his writing that bug me, and this is a pretty long series, so I don't know how quickly I'll get through it, but I'm really excited especially to see what I think about this ending. Most people agree that the first three books are fantastic, and then, the last two are where it gets a bit more controversial, but the Lightbringer series is definitely high on my TBR for this next year. Next up on the list is going to be the Dying Earth books by Jack Vance. So these books famously greatly inspired Gene Wolfe with his Book of the New Sun, so I want to read the books that inspired one of my favorite authors. I know very little about this, except that these are the books that apparently inspired the Dungeons & Dragons system of magic. So I know it blends, science fiction and fantasy, those two genres together. So look forward to that. And I know Jack Vance is one of the forefathers of science fiction, and I've never read him before. So Dying Earth is one of his more popular works, so it makes sense to start there. Next on the list, I don't actually have physical copies of, but it would be the Bound and the Broken series by Ryan Cahill. So this is arguably one of the most popular self-published fantasy series maybe ever. It's gotten a lot of popularity in the last few years, but not from everyone. Some people say it's very derivative of The Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings, and Aragon and typical dragon rider style fantasy. Other people have said that this is sort of the series that is bearing the torch after A Song of Ice and Fire, with this epic, highly political, magical, epic fantasy. So I'm interested to see where on that spectrum I will fall. I really liked a lot of ideas in The Wheel of Time, but ultimately didn't complete the series, so I'm hoping maybe The Bound and the Broken will take the best parts of that and turn it into a news story. So I'm excited to get to this. I know it's got a lot of fans online, so hoping to see what I think of this. And once again, the audiobooks are priced pretty reasonably on Audible, and that's how I go through a lot of books these days, so I'll probably get to it sooner simply because of that. And speaking of audiobooks, next on the list is going to be the Vorkosigan Saga by Lois McMaster Bujold. Now there's an audiobook service out there called Chirp, and they run deals, highly discounting many of their audiobooks, and I picked up most of the Vorkosigan Saga, or 6 or 7 books from it, for just a few dollars from them earlier this year. And I've been interested in reading Bujold for a while. Not only is she, I believe, the author that's won more Hugos than anybody else, but she's a legend in the science fiction genre, and she's a big inspiration for Christopher Ruocchio and his Sun Eater books, and I love those books, so I would love to read the Vorkosigan Saga. I know very little about it, other than the name Miles Vorkosigan, and that he's not a main character until after the first few books, but I really look forward to getting to this in the not-too-distant future, and so that's why it's on the list. Next on the list is going to be the Hyperion books by Dan Simmons, and this is where we start getting into the more iffy category as to I'd like to get to it in the next year, but we'll see how things pan out. So Hyperion is obviously one of the legends of the science fiction genre. Canterbury Tales in space. The Shrike is one of the legendary science fiction monsters. I don't know a whole lot about the plot other than that Canterbury Tales in space, and I know that the later books get more and more divisive, but I've had this on my to-read list for quite a while and hope to get to it soon. Second to last book on the list here will be The Heart of Bronze duology by Matthew Woodring Stover. This is composed of his 2 books, Iron Dawn and Jericho Moon. I don't have a dust jacket on this copy because the dust jacket for the duology bind-up is pretty awful. The individual cover is not so bad, but the bind-up cover is pretty corny looking. Matthew Stover is quickly becoming one of my favorite fantasy authors. I've loved the stuff from Star Wars that I've read from him, and Heroes Die was just an epic fantasy sci-fi mashup. The Heart of Bronze duology, I believe, is the first books of his that were published, and it's Greek-inspired fantasy, which I haven't read much of, so this is pretty unknown as far as fantasy books go, but I love Stover, love his writing, and hope to get to this. And then last on the list, I'll say The Theantine Mosaic by Guy Gavriel Kay. Guy Gavriel Kay is obviously a legend of the fantasy genre. He helped Christopher Tolkien in compiling the Silmarillion, so obviously we're all indebted to him for that. Most people when reading Kay will start with Tigana or The Lions of Al-Rasan, and many people regard this, The Theantine Mosaic, as his best work, this duology. So I figured, I don't know much about Kay, I don't know if I'll like him or not, so why not start with what's considered to be his best and have it all go downhill from there? But in all seriousness, the premise of sailing to Sarantium and Lord of Emperors sounds really interesting, and so this is high on my to-read list coming up. I don't know how much of a priority I'll make it, because Guy Gavriel Kay, kind of like Robin Hobb, is one of those authors that I just kind of save on the back burner for a rainy day, but if I feel the muses call, I might be picking this up in the next year. So anyway, guys, I'm sure there's more books I could add to this list. There's a whole bunch of series that I've started that I need to complete, and there will be a video about that coming sometime. But these are the 10 priority series that I'd like to start, either by the end of this year or into 2025. So let me know if there are series that I should be adding to this list that aren't here, or which of these series I should be bumping up on the list. I'm especially excited, like I said, to start Malazan and Book of the Long Sun and Canticle for Libowitz. So let me know what you think of any of those. And yeah, guys, I will see you in the next one. And I will conclude this by saying, thanks, honey, for taking care of the baby, keeping him quiet so I can make a video. Isn't that right, babe?